highly recommend, and I'm going to try and go nice and slow here, but what I recommend that you do if you're following along is actually follow along with your code on this, okay? So I'm going to build a version of the advanced calculators that will show you branching structures and looping structures and sort of review what we know about variables, okay? So I am going to first print a little welcome line here. Let's print welcome to my calculator. And obviously you can customize this text to whatever you want. Next, I'm going to say type 1 for triangle, type 2 for rectangle. And I'm going to say my area calculator. So I'm going to tell the user what they're going to press. Type 1 for triangle, 2 for rectangle. The next thing I'm going to do is ask the user to choose 1 or 2. Okay? And I'm going to put that in a variable. I'm going to call it str choice. Str choice is a string variable. It's a container, and I'm going to put something in it. What I'm going to put in it is what the user types in response to my input question. And it's going to say enter 1 or 2. So when Python executes this line of code, it's going to write enter 1 or 2 on the screen. The user then will type either 1 or 2, and that string that they type, 1 or 2, will be put into str choice. I'm going to use their input to decide which code to run. Okay. So this is where I'm going to use the if statement. Okay, the if statement is if str choice equals 1. Okay, in this case, if the user enters 1, I'm going to have them calculate the area of a triangle, right? So for now, I'm going to hold my place here with a little print statement. You chose triangle. I'm going to build out the whole structure of my if, elif, else, and then I'll go back and fill in the formulas in a minute. Okay? So again, I'm asking if they chose 1, then we're going to do triangle. The next is an elif. And I'm going to say if they typed 2 and then this variable equals 2, then we're going to do the rectangle. So if str choice equals 2, then print you chose rectangle. Now, it's entirely possible that the user could have typed something other than 1 or 2. And so I'm going to use an else in that branch to catch and make sure that I am aware of anything else they typed and let them know that that's not something that I understand. Print, that wasn't one of the choices. So now that is a functional program. It doesn't do any calculations yet, but it will work for the purpose of doing the menu. Let's run it, okay? So if I run that, it says, welcome to my area calculator, type 1 for triangle, type 2 for rectangle, and then it says enter 1 or 2. If I type 1, then it says you chose triangle, and it exits. Because I didn't do anything else, if I run it again, and I type the number 2, it says you chose rectangle. And then it quits because I don't have any other code after that. And then, of course, if I type cow, it says that wasn't one of the choices. So I'm asking them for their input to type 1 or 2. And then based on that input, I'm branching to either this code, or if they type 2, I run this code. If they type anything else, then I run this code. That's how an if, elif, else works. So now inside of each of these blocks, and you'll note, everything inside here is going to be indented at the same level. Okay? It's going to be all indented. To get a triangle, I need the base and the height of the triangle, because the formula for a triangle is 1/2 times base times height. So what I need is the base. I'm going to say it's an integer, and I'm going to get that from the user. So I'm going to ask them, what is the base? Okay. Now, remember, I cannot do math on what they type. Why? Because it's a string. Even if they type a number, a digit, it will be a string. So I have to take whatever they provide me an input, and I need to convert that to an integer before I put it in this variable so that I can do math with it later. So I'm going to surround that input with the int function, which changes it to an integer. So whatever they type in response to the prompt then gets passed to the int function and then put into int base. If they type a word here like dog, it's going to give me an error, but we're going to pretend like that's not a concern just to keep the program simple for everybody to follow here. I need to do the same thing for height. Int height equals int input, what is the height? Okay, so this is me getting the base and the height from the user, converting them to integers, and then putting them into these variables, int base and int height. The next step for this is to do the math. Now the math is going to come out to a float because it has division in it. So I'm going to call it a FL area. That's the new variable that has the answer. Equals int base times int height times 0.5. Okay, so that is the formula for a triangle area. 1/2 or 0.5 times base times height. So the very last thing I have to do is display the results. For that, I'm going to use an F string. The area of of your triangle is FL area. Okay, and I'm going to leave that unrounded. I'm just going to leave it as simple as possible. So now, if they choose 1 because they want to do the triangle, it prints, you chose triangle, and then it asks them, what is the base? They type something in, it gets turned to an integer, put in that variable. It asks them, what is the height? Again, they type something in, it gets changed to an integer, put into the variable. Then the variable FL area is set to the value of int base times int height times 5, which is the triangle formula. And then finally, that gets printed out. Now notice, again, cannot stress this enough because folks have been having a hard time with it. All of this code that gets executed under this if, so if SCR choice is equal to 1, all of this code gets executed. It's all indented at the same level. Everything's the same. If I don't have everything indented, what you'll notice is that it causes errors below that. So you want to make sure everything in that branch is indented at the same level. Now I can actually run this. Obviously it won't calculate the rectangle for me, but the triangle should be working fine now. So if I choose triangle, what is the base? 10. What is the height? 10. The area of the triangle is 50.0, which is base times height is 100, and half of that is 50. So our code is working. Now I'm going to run through rectangle. I'll go through that a little more quickly because it's repetitive. Same thing, int length equals int input. What is the length? Int height equals int input. What is the height? And then the formula for a rectangle is even easier. FL area equals int length times int height. And then finally, I print out the results as an F string. The area of your rectangle is FL area. Okay, so there is, I have the triangle code, I have the rectangle code, and this code that doesn't do anything. So let's run that, and I'll try the rectangle out. Let's just test it. 2, 10 by 20. Area of a rectangle is 200. Okay, so my code is working. So now, let's say there's one more thing I want to do here. Let's say I want to have this program keep running. Okay, I want to keep running this program so that they can choose other things and do more calculations. Now, what I'm going to do for the purpose of this is I'm going to shrink this code down, not super small, but a little bit smaller, because it allows me to display more on the screen. Actually, in fact, I'm going to go to a size that's probably too small for you to read on the screen, but you can see the whole program. And that is useful because I want you to see what it is I'm doing here all at once. So I've got my if, my elif, my else. I've got the things indented the way they should be. And I want to repeat all of this just over and over and over. Every time we get it, every time they make a choice and do something, I want to repeat all of it. So the part that I want to repeat, since it's all of it, I'm going to indent that whole piece of code. And the only thing that's indented or unindented all the way to the left side is going to be my loop. And I'm just going to say while true here because I want that to loop forever, forever and ever. It'll do this every time I choose a calculator, do the calculations, it'll just start over at the top. And I'll throw a couple line breaks in there too. So the whole code is now in that loop. What you'll notice is the main block of the code, the main part of the code that's in that loop is indented one space, including the if, the elif, and the else. The things inside if and inside the elif and inside the else are indented 2 levels because they have to be indented 1 level past the if. So it's like an outline. The while is the only thing that's at the base level. The rest of the code is indented 1 space, and everything inside the if and inside the elif and inside the else are indented 2 spaces. There's a lot of confusion with that, and it's normal because you're getting used to this idea of things being indented at a certain level. But everything inside this, everything that's inside the loop here is going to happen over and over. So if I run this, oh, that wasn't one of the choices. There we go. What triangle is 10, 10. There's the area of my triangle, and then it starts over. Ask me for a choice. And it'll just keep going forever. That's good, but it's kind of annoying that there's no way to exit the program except for stopping it. So I'm going to add one more thing. But before I do that, I'm going to make the text size huge again so you can read. Okay, so we've got the while loop. Everything inside it is indented 1 space. You can see it follows these handy little vertical lines. And then I can see here that inside my if, things are indented 1, 2 spaces because it has to be 1 space inside the if. But they're all nice and uniform. And again, if I unindent something that shouldn't be unindented, I get some weird errors. So if you got weird errors like this happening, you want to check your indentation. So the last thing I want to do is I want to provide the user a way out. So after they do their choices and they get their results, I want to go back to this level, just one indentation in, because I want it to happen at the end of this loop. So it shouldn't be inside the else. If I do it at this level, even with this print statement, it will only happen if the else is triggered. So I don't want that. I want it indented only 1 level. And I want to say, print, do you want another calculation? Yes or no. Okay. And then I'm going to do one more input. And I'll do the prompt as enter yes or no. There we go. That looks good. And I have to assign that to a variable. So I'm going to say str another equals that. So again, this is in the main loop. After the calculations, it finishes this branch of code where it does the if, elif, else, it's going to go back to this main branch that's indented 1 level. It's going to print, do you want another calculation? And then it'll say enter yes or no as the prompt. Whatever they enter will go into str another. And the only thing I'm interested in is if they say no. If they say yes, the loop should continue. If they say no, the loop should break. So I've got one final if here. If str another equals no, then I'm going to break. I'm going to break out of that loop. Now notice, again, I'm indented one level for the print and the input and the indented one level. The thing inside the if this is true, that they type no, then the code that gets executed is line 37. It's indented two levels or one level beyond the if, and it's a break statement, which breaks out of that while true loop. So let's run it. Okay, so triangle. Do you want another calculation? Why, sure. Okay, and then if I say no here, then the program exits. Now, after I exit the code, maybe I want to say, thank you for using my calculator. I do not want that line of code to be inside the while loop. I want it to be after the while loop. So this is going to be unindented all the way to the left because I don't want it to be inside this loop. I want it to be outside of the loop. And the only way to do that is to go all the way to the left-hand margin, unindented, because that's what's going to be executed when this loop is done. If I collapse this loop, the whole code, you can see here that I don't want this to be in it. If you collapse a piece of code, let me show you. Print, thank you for using my calculator. Okay, this is in that loop. And the reason I know it's in that loop is that when I collapse that code, it gets wrapped up, it gets rolled up inside that code. I don't want it to be in the loop. I'm going to take it out of the loop by unindenting it to the left. Now I can see when the while true is finished, when that loop gets exited, it's going to say this after. Okay, so I want you to note that difference. So let's just try it really quick one more time. 2, rectangle. Do I not want it? I don't want that, so I'm going to choose no. And then it says, thank you for using my calculator. If they choose another calculation, I don't want it to say, thank you for using my calculator. I want to thank them when they're done, when they exit the program. So that is the calculator code, the advanced calculator code, with all of the bells and whistles that we've talked about. But that is how the code is put together.